In this episode, we're diving into the fascinating world of body language, exploring how those subtle shifts and gestures can speak volumes. It's like having a secret decoder ring for human interaction.
And unlocking that code can completely transform how we understand and connect with the people around us. We're talking about everything from micro-expressions that flit across faces in a fraction of a second to the way someone positions their feet in a conversation. It's a whole silent language waiting to be deciphered.
Exactly. And the title of the Arabic text we're exploring today, كيف تقرأ لغة الجسد أسرار ستجعلك محترفا في قراءة وفهم الأشخاص من حولك, translates to How to Read Body Language, Secrets that will make you a professional in reading and understanding the people around you. Ambitious, right? Let's see if it lives up to the promise.
It certainly sets a high bar. But think about how valuable this skill is. Imagine being able to understand unspoken emotions, anticipate someone's reactions, or even detect deception. It's like having a superpower.
Totally. Let's start with the basics. The text emphasizes the importance of observing clusters of behaviors rather than focusing on single gestures. One crossed arm might not mean anything, but crossed arms combined with pursed lips and averted gaze, that tells a different story.
Right, context is key. Like if someone's shivering, it probably means they're cold, not necessarily that they're nervous. We need to consider the whole picture.
Absolutely. And the environment, too. Someone leaning back in a comfy armchair isn't necessarily disengaged. They might just be relaxed. Now, the text delves into specific gestures, and I found the section on eye contact particularly insightful. It talks about how prolonged eye contact can be interpreted as either intimacy or aggression, depending on other cues.
Fascinating. It reminds me of that awkward moment when you accidentally make eye contact with a stranger on the bus and then have to quickly look away. Is it aggression? Is it attraction? Is it just awkward? The world may never know.
Exactly. It's a social minefield out there. And speaking of minefields, let's talk about hand gestures. The text highlights how open palms can signify honesty and sincerity, while clenched fists can indicate anger or frustration.
Makes sense. You don't want to shake hands with someone whose fist is clenched, unless you're about to start a boxing match.
Good point. And then there's the classic head tilt. The text suggests that a tilted head can indicate interest and engagement, which I find to be true in my own experience.
Me too. It's like your ears are literally perking up to hear better. Unless, of course, you have a crick in your neck. Then it just means you need a massage.
Aha, that's true. We always need to consider alternative explanations. Now let's talk about posture. The text emphasizes the importance of an upright posture, which conveys confidence and authority.
But slouching doesn't always mean a lack of confidence, right? Sometimes it's just comfortable, especially after a long day. Or maybe you're just trying to blend into the background and avoid eye contact on that bus.
True. Context, context, context. The text also mentions mirroring, which is when you subtly mimic the other person's body language. Apparently, this can build rapport and create a sense of connection.
I've heard about that. It's supposed to happen subconsciously when you're really connecting with someone. But if you do it deliberately, it can seem creepy, right? Like, don't go around copying every single thing someone does. That's just weird.
Definitely. Subtlety is key. Now, let's move on to facial expressions. The text provides a detailed breakdown of different emotions and their corresponding micro-expressions.
Micro-expressions are so cool. They're those fleeting expressions that flash across our faces for a fraction of a second, revealing our true feelings. It's like our faces are trying to tell the truth, even when our words aren't.
Precisely. And the text also discusses the importance of recognizing cultural differences in body language. What might be considered polite in one culture could be offensive in another.
So true. Like in some cultures, direct eye contact is a sign of respect, while in others, it can be seen as challenging or rude. You definitely don't want to accidentally start an international incident because you misunderstood a gesture.
Exactly. This reminds me of that time Just kidding. I don't have personal anecdotes. I'm an AI. But imagine the awkward situations that could arise from misinterpreting body language.
Oh, I can imagine. Like, if you thought someone was flirting with you just because they were being polite, or if you thought someone was angry when they were just concentrating. So many potential misunderstandings.
Absolutely. Now let's delve a little deeper into some specific examples of body language and what they might reveal. The text mentions that touching your face, especially your nose or mouth, can be a sign of deception.
Interesting. So if someone starts touching their face while they're telling a story, it might be a red flag. Unless they have an itch, of course, or a sudden urge to practice their nose-picking skills.
Ha! Good point. And speaking of red flags, the text also mentions that excessive fidgeting can indicate nervousness or discomfort.
So true. Like when you're in a job interview and you can't stop tapping your foot or playing with your pen. You're basically broadcasting your anxiety to the entire room.
Exactly. And then there's the classic arm crossing gesture. As we mentioned earlier, crossed arms can often signal defensiveness or resistance.
Or maybe you're just cold. Or you're trying to subtly hug yourself because you're feeling a little insecure. Or maybe you just really like the way your shirt looks when your arms are crossed. The possibilities are endless.
True. It's all about considering the context. Now, the text also discusses the importance of paying attention to vocal cues, like tone of voice and pace of speech.
Absolutely. Sometimes how something is said is even more important than what is said. Like, if someone says that's great in a sarcastic tone, it clearly doesn't mean they're actually impressed.
Exactly. And speaking of sarcasm, let's talk about humor in body language. The text mentions that a genuine smile reaches the eyes, crinkling the corners, while a fake smile is often limited to the mouth.
So true. You can always spot a fake smile a mile away. It's like they're trying to force their face into a pleasant expression, but their eyes are screaming, "Help me!"
Ha! That's a perfect description. Now let's move on to the section on power dynamics and body language. The text discusses how taking up more space can convey dominance and authority.
Like manspreading on the subway? Is that what they mean? Because I don't think anyone appreciates that particular display of dominance.
Ha! Well, maybe not that specifically. But in general, expanding your posture, like standing with your feet apart and your arms open, can convey confidence and power.
Makes sense. You want to look like you own the room, not like you're trying to shrink into a corner. Unless you're playing hide and seek, of course. Then shrinking is definitely a good strategy.
Good point. Now let's talk about cultural differences in body language again. The text emphasizes the importance of being aware of these differences to avoid misunderstandings.
Definitely. Like, in some cultures, bowing is a sign of respect, while in others, it might be considered submissive. You don't want to accidentally bow to your boss if it's not customary in your workplace.
Exactly. And in some cultures, direct eye contact is considered rude, while in others, it's a sign of respect.
It's a minefield out there. You never know what might offend someone. Maybe we should all just communicate through interpretive dance to avoid any potential mishaps.
Ha. That's an interesting idea. Now let's talk about the role of body language in negotiations. The text suggests that mirroring the other person's body language can create rapport and build trust.
But isn't that a bit manipulative? Like, are you trying to trick them into liking you by copying their every move?
Well, it depends on your intention. If you're genuinely trying to connect with someone, then mirroring can be a helpful tool. But if you're doing it just to manipulate them, then yeah, it's definitely unethical.
Makes sense. Like, don't go around mirroring someone's angry expression just to escalate the conflict. That's just adding fuel to the fire.
Exactly. Now let's talk about the importance of being aware of your own body language. The text suggests that being mindful of your posture, gestures, and facial expressions can help you communicate more effectively.
So true. Like, if you're constantly slouching and fidgeting, you're not exactly projecting an image of confidence and competence. You're basically saying, "I'm a nervous wreck, please don't take me seriously."
Ha! Exactly. And if you're constantly frowning, people might think you're angry or disapproving, even if you're not.
So, smile more, even if you don't feel like it. Fake it till you make it. Just kidding. Try to be genuine. Unless you're a politician, then maybe faking it is part of the job description.
Ha! Good one. Now, let's talk about how to improve your body language skills. The text suggests practicing in front of a mirror, recording yourself, and getting feedback from others.
That's a great idea. It's like rehearsing for a play. You want to make sure your body language is conveying the right message. You don't want to accidentally deliver your big monologue while picking your nose.
Ha! Definitely not. And speaking of monologues, I think we've covered quite a bit of ground today. Let's recap some of the key takeaways. First, context is key. Second, pay attention to clusters of behaviors, not just single gestures. Third, be mindful of cultural differences. And fourth, practice, practice, practice.
Great summary. And remember, body language is a powerful tool. Use it wisely. Don't go around analyzing everyone's every move like you're Sherlock Holmes. Unless you actually are Sherlock Holmes, in which case, carry on.
Ha! Good point. Well, that's all for today's episode. Thanks for joining us. And remember, the next time you're on the bus,